Thank you all that are joining virtually, and for those in person, thank you for being there. Like Andrea said, Colleen Larson. I'm the Regional Specialized Dairy Agent serving South Central Florida for the dairy industry in a variety of programs. And today we are going to cover, let's see how to make my slide go forward. We are going to cover just kind of the current status in the dairy industry, where we are, where we've been. I won't even attempt to tell you where we're going. I have no crystal balls, but we are going to cover the status, technology that is being used across the industry, especially in Florida recently, our kind of current hot topic. The highly pathogenic avian influenza and how it's affecting the dairy industry. And then a program that I work a lot with in our state and across the country, the FARM, Farmers Assuring Responsible Management Program, that is used in the dairy industry, but relevant to other industries as we go forward in ways that as ag industries, we can help assure consumer trust and transparency in the food that we're producing. So to start off, let's just kind of talk about where we are right now in the industry. As with other commodities and just other businesses, due to the economies of scale, the dairy industry is no different. We have seen declining number of farms and increasing size of farms. The economies of scale make bigger operations more efficient, and that's no different in the dairy industry. What we have seen is primarily those dairy farms that are stopping milking cows. Most of them are staying in agriculture in some way, a lot in cattle ranches for cow-calf operations. And others are contracting to row crops and that type of farming. So a lot of them staying in agriculture and selling those cows to other dairy farms. So the total number of dairy cows, not seeing a huge difference, but definitely a decrease in the number of farms from somewhere around 125 10 years ago to probably right around 60 right now. So almost half, which is a concern and something to take note of. Another big trend we've seen in the last couple years is dairy farms across Florida are mostly not raising, their replacements. We have, because of our environment and resources, mostly feed, it's much more difficult to raise a calf here in Florida, where all of the grain and feed has to be brought in by rail or truck. And so especially right now with the limited overall cattle numbers across the UF and beef and dairy, that puts us at a challenge for replacing those cow numbers, year to year. So a lot of them are contract raised, so they still maintain control of them and ownership of them, but those animals are leaving the state to get to the springing stage and coming back right before calving. Another area that has decreased is dairy processing. So we've had large scale processors in the Central Florida, Orlando, South Florida, Miami area, just due to land pressure, those processing facilities, it hasn't made as much sense to have them in those locales. So again, with less processing capability, there's just less options for where that milk in Florida goes. So those are kind of the negatives. We do have some, positives, and we'll definitely get into more of those in a little bit. But with the challenges, we kind of have to ask what's keeping our Florida market and our Florida dairy industry viable and going. So, a big thing that farmers utilize across the industry, both state and national programs for cost share for facilities, whether it's barns or nutrient management technology, there is a realization that those projects need to be supported both from our financial sustainability of the industry as well as the benefit to our environment and hence all of us. Conservation and easement programs, keeping land in agriculture is something that ranches and farms across the state are participating in and hopefully will continue. Energy production in the form of methane digesters. We currently have 6 or 7 large-scale methane digesters on dairy farms across the state of Florida. 4 of them here in South Central Florida. And depending on whose estimates you hear, each one of those powers around 1,000 houses. That's the equivalent. Most of them are producing natural gas, but the power equivalent is 1,000 homes each. So the contributions to the rest of our environment and communities is substantial. And then an area that is has begun, but will continue to increase is the carbon market. There's been a lot of hesitance about, jumping into those markets from farmers just because of the unknowns and the reporting requirements. However, I did read a recent article in Hardee Dairyman that said that dairy farmers should expect carbon to be as commonly reported as somatic cell count in the future. So, we know that there's a demand on the ag industries to be part of that solution and really kind of carry the load for improving our carbon footprint and then offering that excess that we're able to do in carbon sequestration to other industries. And then we do have quite a significant amount of niche markets for producer processors who are producing their own milk and dairy products that are able to manage that, distribute it, market their product, and then also reap the benefits of some of those retail prices. Along with that, we do have a kind of a loophole, I guess, in Florida that allows for the sale of raw milk for pet food consumption. However, when consumers are buying it for $10 to $15 per gallon, and it sits on a retail shelf right next to certified grade A milk, there's little doubt that people are buying it for their own consumption. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the HPAI discussion and how this is a challenge right now, but that's just kind of the status. There's been a huge upswing in the interest in raw milk with really no scientific reason other than just the power of social media and people thinking there's the next best great thing. Just to kind of reiterate the numbers and where the dairy cows are across the country. You can see on each state, it gives a ranking for the top, I believe, 24 states. So you can see Florida's number 22, just kind of on the bottom of that threshold of the top 24 states. Again, when we were at that 125,000 cow number somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago, our rank was 18 or 19. So the Florida dairy industry undoubtedly has been decreasing, and there's other locations that have been increasing. So that trend has been noticeable. We have environmental pressure, land use pressure, just to name a few, and then the cost of production here, which has many factors, but a big one is the availability of feed. Just to kind of zoom in on our area a little bit more, Florida and Georgia are similar in the decrease in numbers that we've had in the last year. This is January 1, 24 to January 1, 25. So not a huge amount. I think it represents in both of them somewhere between a 2 and 3.5% of the total number. So there's not a huge difference. And like I said, most of those smaller farms that have stopped milking cows, the majority of the cows that left those farms ended up on dairy farms in one or the other of those states. So not a huge decrease, but there is a growing trend for just decreased numbers in the Florida dairy industry. So we talked about some of the ways that farmers are staying here through conservation and other streams of revenue with energy programs, but to stay viable, a big thing that farms, have to do is stay up with technology. And, technology is interesting. I love a couple of these quotes that, it's hard to remember what technology was 20 years ago because it becomes so commonplace now. So, in UF and across the world, the big buzzword AI is something that we're hearing all the time. And in the dairy industry, I don't think we'll ever be able to change our definition of AI. So artificial insemination is a technology that was, new 50 years ago and that, is now just commonplace across the entire industry and widespread. So I'll just, kind of talk about some of the newer technologies, but also recognizing that we've been using, quite a bit of technology in dairy farms for, several decades. One thing that we have seen across the state in Florida and into Georgia is a lot of new rotary parlors. The labor efficiency of rotary parlors is undoubtedly higher than the parlors that require cows to walk in one at a time. It allows greater efficiency for parlor throughput and for just the efficiency of the people working on the farm, not having to walk the such great distances, and one person being able to do the job of multiple people depending on the size of the rotary and what it's replacing. These are also usually able to be retrofitted to a robotic milker. Those are in other parts of the country. I don't think we have any robotic rotaries in Florida yet, but it's only a matter of time as our labor pressure continues to be seen. Automation, there is, I would miss a lot of things if I tried to discuss all of the automation that is taking place on dairy farms, but just, the little things from a milking unit that automatically comes off when the flow decreases, that, doesn't require a person to do that manually, to all the equipment basically self-cleaning itself, at the touch of a button is, pretty phenomenal, and that's been commonplace for a long time. One thing that we have seen a lot more of is monitoring technology, and we've seen that across the board. So with milk, there is a newly adopted system that has replaced kind of some outdated equipment, and it is a truck loading system. It's called the Piper system, and the accuracy of that has led to pretty much eliminating the shrink caused from trailers spilling over when they're not calibrated correctly, to the inefficiency of sending a load of milk that isn't fully loaded. So that system has just made, huge strides in the efficiency of how we ship milk to processors. If you were a truck driver that had to leave Okeechobee and drive into, Miami, you would certainly appreciate the efficiency of having, those trips as, as useful as possible and not having to make more of them. And it just helps to, have the overall efficiency in the system. Cow monitoring, that was kind of, really big new, and people thought this will, kind of never take off, is being used more and more at farms every single day. And the technology just keeps getting better and better. So either with the use of a collar or an ear tag, farmers can keep track of what's going on in their herd through the evaluation of animals using algorithms that I won't pretend to understand. Please don't ask questions about that. Someone much smarter than me developed those. But what they're able to do is give farms a very accurate timing of when cows are most receptive to be bred. So it has increased heat detection and conception rates and breeding without the use of additional people to observe for heats or the use of additional hormones to, set up those cows to be bred. It also measures rumination, and allows farmers basically to find a cow that is sick and evaluate her before she even knows she's sick. That was, has been kind of a common, buzzword and sentiment with those collars and ear tags is that, they know that the cow's sick before she knows it. And so getting, expedited treatment and, some of that prophylactic therapy before the symptoms really start is making a huge difference in herds, and is really a big benefit, and would have seemed completely futuristic. It would have been, like on the Jetsons 10 years ago. Just really interesting, and technology that came very fast and became part of the industry, commonplace. So the other area that I'll mention is genetics. So in the dairy industry, I mentioned artificial insemination. So genetics has been used to accelerate the production of dairy cows for the last 75 years in huge ways. And somewhere along the line, we realized that we were losing some other things like reproductive efficiency, and with the use of AI technology, that was somewhat easily corrected in about 3 or 4 generations. But now genetics are making even bigger strides in using indexes to determine which cows are the best fit and should be raised for that operation, using things like health indexes, productive life, their feed efficiency, and on and on. So the health indexes can be determined from that animal. Many herds, just in the first couple days of birth, are taking a genetic tissue sample and using those to make decisions about that calf. When you think about the amount of input and money and time and labor that it takes, it's probably close to $2,500 that's put into that calf, whether it's going to be a good calf or not, before she starts making milk. So to pick the right ones and utilize those animals that will be the best fit for the farm is a great use of technology. I'll also mention, just because it's one of my interest and favorite things, that University of Florida has developed genetic technology with and has done a lot of work with Dr. Hansen with the slick gene. And so, just working towards keeping our animals more comfortable in our environment. The cows have shorter hair, and they've been proven to be able to thermoregulate better when they have that slick gene that gives them shorter hair. So that's exciting, for the future. We talked a little bit about the methane digesters already. That technology, has the potential to impact not just our farms, bottom line, but also our, the rest of our community and society with energy. All right, so moving on to the, kind of the hot topic in the dairy industry. We've seen a lot of things in the news about the highly pathogenic avian influenza. We started hearing about it last year, a little after this time, in herds in Texas and Kansas. And it has quickly in some areas and slowly in others kind of made its way into other parts of the state. We have not detected it in any dairy herds in Florida or any adjoining states. So, that's good news, but there is a lot of preparation and work being done to, prepare for and hopefully prevent, but prepare for if it gets here. So biosecurity wise, dairy farmers are already pretty excellent at, taking care of the cows to prevent contagious mastitis and, keep them healthy that way. So hasn't been a really huge change there for the HPAI situation, but there have been some, issues with heifers and calves. So earlier I mentioned that heifers and calves are being raised outside of Florida. And one of those places that they're being sent to are states that have had positive cases. And so when those animals come back in, it requires additional effort to monitor, test, and keep them separate to make sure that that's not a vector to pass that from a positive state to Florida that that doesn't currently have it. Employee education is a big part of that. We have a lot of employees that live on farm, so they rightfully so kind of treat it like this is where they live, but just making that separation between where we come in and out of places. It's called a line of separation in the biosecurity world, and just continuing to educate people on how they can do their part is a big part of the preparation that's going on. Another way that it has kind of affected our industry is we've definitely seen a limit in, farms have limited the number of visitors that are on farm just to necessary personnel or people that have an ongoing need to be there. Obviously, we have some vendors, delivery people, those kind of, allied industry that have a legitimate need and reason to be there, but we have seen a decrease in the willingness to do tours and research on farms. So hopefully there'll be a solution to that. The Florida dairy industry has provided a lot of opportunities for research, both with University of Florida and other industry and education organizations throughout the country. So that's a valuable part of our research availability, and we need to find ways to not have that process stop. And then the last part that I'll mention, I said we don't have any current cases. We have at least 5 herds throughout the state, and we'll have more very soon, that have been involved in testing either at the individual cow level or at the whole herd level. So the monitored herd is when a herd sends once a week samples of 24 hours of milk collection. So I mentioned that Piper monitoring system. Without that system, that would become a very laborious process of collecting 24 hours of a representative sample. With that system, it cuts that time significantly, and has been very helpful in the sampling process. By the end of this month, we at all states should be working towards this plan to monitor the status of dairy herds across the country. I think there are 10 states, including Florida, that haven't started their monitoring program yet, but they need to by the end of this month. So that is being worked out between the Florida Department of Ag and the USDA for what that will look like in this state. So the options are individual herd or the monitored herd testing like we're doing on some of the selected farms right now, or silo testing at processing plants. The challenge with that is that we have milk coming in from other states. So Florida is what is considered a deficit state, and that means we have to bring in milk from other places. And so if that silo is positive, it's not indicative of a positive animal or a positive herd in Florida. It could come in from other places. However, it would cause the, quarantine statuses and that type of thing. So the size of our industry, some industries are so huge that they could never test on every farm, so they have to do silo testing. Some are so small in different states that it's easy to test the 20 herds in the state. We're kind of right in that middle ground where they both kind of have their pros and cons. So we'll see what the state and the USDA decides to do in the next week or so. Moving on to the last item that I wanted to talk about today is the farm program. So the program was developed kind of after seeing what happened in some other industries, both animal and other foods, with the auditing process and the responsibility for opening up these operations to multiple auditing agencies and trying to find a solution proactively and preventatively for dairy farms. So the National Milk Producers Federation and Dairy Management Inc. came together to present this as the option for the dairy industry. And this program is designed to allow farms or dairy farms, veterinarians, animal scientists, processors, every stakeholder in the dairy industry to have input into the goals and the standards of this program. And it is used to evaluate farms and provide that information to retailers who then can provide it to consumers, justifying and showing that they are obtaining and purchasing milk and dairy products from dairy farms that are of the highest standard of animal care and the other areas that they participate in. So to be part of the program, there are two portions that are mandatory, and those are the animal care and antibiotic stewardship. About 99% of the milk that is certified for sale for, grade A processing across the country is from processors, dairy farmers that are part of this program, and they are evaluated through these standards. So just as an example, in the animal care and antibiotic stewardship, it is a trained evaluator who comes on farm, and they spend usually half a day to a full day with a farmer, perhaps their veterinarian, and the key people who do the jobs on the farm. And they go through a evaluation tool. It's usually a digital evaluation tool. And they verify that the practices that are in a standard operating procedure match what's actually being done on the farm, and that certain benchmarks are met. So benchmarks include, feed availability and water cleanliness, body condition score, lameness, the discontinuation of tail docking. That was an overwhelming demand, and scientifically proven that tail docking did not increase cleanliness of milk, and that it could cause pain and discomfort and the lack of natural movement by a cow. And so that was something that early on was part of the program, that tail docking needed to be taken out of the farm's normal practices. There's a very low threshold for broken tails, which can indicate that cows are overcrowded or that they could be mishandled. So those are all just, there's hundreds of areas that are evaluated, but those are just a couple examples of what is being looked for. And there's also the requirement to provide those standard operating procedures, the drug use records, protocols for how every type of disease and every type of vaccination is used and monitored and recorded, as well as the people who work with these animals and documentation of their training. So it's very extensive, and I think that's why the retailers and processors agreed that it was sufficient, and the dairy industry could, basically have their own program to evaluate themselves, but was evaluated by second and third parties. Some of the other areas of the program that are not always mandatory, they're not mandatory to be part of the program, but different retailers and processors may require them, such as, milk maybe going to Starbucks. They might require a farm to participate in the environmental stewardship portion of the program because that aligns with their company values. So environmental stewardship and workforce development are two of the areas that a lot of companies are looking at making mandatory for their producers, because then they have that data, again, as part of their goals of their company, to show that they are, you know, getting supplies, whether it's milk or coffee beans or whatever, from responsible, environmentally responsible and people and operations that are responsible with the people that they employ and work with. Obviously, right now, the biosecurity tool has become increasingly useful. It was developed to prepare for a potential foot and mouth disease outbreak, but it's been applicable to the HPAI situation and has been used by farms who are monitoring. That's part of that monitored herd status, is that they have a biosecurity plan in place. So having this tool ready to go and not starting with, you know, starting from scratch was helpful in that situation. I didn't put this one on the what we were going to talk about slide, but it just kind of wraps up a couple other areas of dairy activity in the state. So it's kind of outreach and youth and other. So just to kind of, you know, mention, we do dairy farms along with UF Extension and other areas, including our official checkoff programs, do a lot of dairy outreach. We have a huge population in the state of Florida, you know, 3 million people. And with the decrease in dairy farms, that's a decrease in funding for checkoff programs. So kind of proactively, the Florida Dairy Farmers, which is the checkoff organization, the farmer-funded mandatory checkoff organization, proactively between the Michigan farmers and the Florida farmers realized that the disparity in dairy farms and population was creating a problem. We need to market milk where people live. And so not as many people live in Michigan, and they're having, if we went back to the map, they're having a pretty big increase in the number of dairy cows across the state. They have a lot of processing that has moved into Michigan. And so they realize we've got to find ways to promote milk and, you know, kind of tell our story to the people. And if the people are in a different state, then we need to, you know, form those partnerships. There have been, you know, project and 1 year partnerships, but this is kind of a new idea to, you know, help fix a system, the checkoff system that, you know, has had some critiques through the years about the way that it works. So we're hopeful that that will help that. One of the programs that is run under that is the Adopt a Cow program. So this year we have over 1 million students nationwide and about 90,000 of them in Florida that virtually adopt calves, that they learn about their calves and the dairy industry through that program. And the amount of interest and support and questions is overwhelming. So those 2 little calves in the bottom are in my backyard, and I participate that on, you know, both sides as a dairy farmer and as a, you know, extension specialist, educating people about the dairy industry. And then last, I'll wrap up with our youth. We're very fortunate to have a lot of volunteers and programs that support youth livestock activities, including dairy, for them to participate at national competitions. And they've been very successful in those competitions. It's great to go to a state like Wisconsin or New York and hear something, you know, like, oh, we didn't know there were dairy farms in Florida, and then have kids that are successful. So we rely on a lot of support from, you know, 4-H and FFA and UF and industry to make that happen. So, you know, that makes it a little exciting for the future, that there's interest in activities that, you know, hopefully we will have a bright future in the Florida dairy industry. And with that, I think I'm just about right on time, and I will move on to my my last slide. Let's see if our cows will come visit us. All right. So I think we have a chat box open. Okay, Andrea, that's you in the chat box.
Okay, well, no questions here in the room, Colleen. Do you have anything you might like to say in closing? And then everybody can see your contact information there if they do have questions to follow up with you on.
I guess I probably should have I should have said this when we were talking about the evaluation tool. If there are people working in other industries, it's just something that, you know, we kind of need to pay attention to and be ready for across industries. We know that we are going to continue to have you know, oversight, scrutiny, the need for transparency as the ag industry decreases in the number of people involved, and that includes us, the educators, the animal scientists, the people working within those industries, to be proactive and think about the solutions before we are you know, mandated to do something that someone else comes up with. So that program has really you know, from the side of the producer and everyone else involved, been a pretty big success, because other industries have you know, had the experience of every single company that they sell their product to comes on the farm for a different audit. So if it's a, you know, strawberry grower and they are selling to, you know, Walmart, Publix, Winn-Dixie, and Aldi, they could have multiple audits per year, you know, just to you know, just to have that market. So you know, the beef industry is definitely a little different, but it is something to pay attention to.
That Ona Highlight is going to be on March 11th, and it is Controlling Australian Beardgrass in Florida Pastures with Dr. Tenzi Makubi and Dr. Brent Sellers. And as always, whenever I share with you guys today's recording, I will share the link to register for this next Ona Highlight, as well as the flyers and information on these next couple of events that I'm going to be telling you about. Tomorrow in Okeechobee, we have the Cattlemen's Roundtable, and Dr. Philippe Moriel is going to be discussing the benefits of early weaning. This is an in-person event. There is no option for Zoom. I was asked that the other day, so just wanted to mention that. It is at 11 o'clock and lunch is included. No registration is necessary. Just go if you can. It's at the Okeechobee Livestock Market. February 24th through 26th in Gainesville is the Florida Ruminant Nutrition Symposium. This is the 36th annual meeting, and early registration closes on the 17th. And I will be sharing that with you so that you can see the full schedule, registration information, as well as information on accommodations. Managing Cattle Enterprises for Success. This program is going to be taking place 2 different dates, 2 different locations, and will be covering 2 different topics. So if you would like to register for that, you'll need to register for each event, and the link there will take you to that site so you can do that. There is a small fee for attending, and I believe a meal is included. And those are both evening meetings, 5:30 p.m. We do have our field day coming up on April the 17th. That is a full day event. If you've never visited the center, it's a great time to come to meet everybody and to learn about all the research our faculty and students are doing. Get out in the field, see some plots, have a wonderful steak lunch, and meet some of our sponsors at their booths to learn about what they offer. So keep that in mind. If you'd like to attend, registration is open, and early registration will end on March 14th. If you're not already doing so, we invite you to follow us on social media. We have several different channels that we're on. And if you do not get our Friday news by email, just send me an email at this address you see on the screen, and I will be very happy to add you to our email list where you can learn about everything that's happening here at the center, as well as upcoming events and things of interest that we come across that we think you would like to hear about. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll be sending the link to the video and everything in the next day or two. Now, when this closes, a little survey is going to pop up. And if you don't mind, take a moment to answer. I think there's 1 or 2 questions. We really appreciate your feedback and hope to see you in March. Thank you.